Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something really fascinating unfolding in New York City. The Democratic mayoral primary for 2025. It's delivered some, well, pretty surprising
Definitely
results.
caught a lot of people off guard, yeah.
So our mission today really is to unpack this for you. We want to look at the outcome, who the key players are, figure out this ranked choice voting system they use,
Right.
and then think about what it all means, for the city and maybe even wider politics.
And the way we're doing this is by looking at a whole bunch of reports that came out right as it was happening. Real-time stuff.
Okay.
We're talking CBS, AP, NBC, NPR. Basically getting that snapshot as the story broke.
Got it. So the big headline then. Zohran Mamdani, his apparent victory in the primary. Quite the upset.
It really is. You have to remember, Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, he was considered the front runner for months, a long time.
Yeah, the big name.
Exactly. And Mamdani, the sources were calling him virtually unknown at the start.
Yeah.
But somehow he built up this substantial lead over Cuomo.
Who they also describe as, more experienced but scandal-scarred.
Precisely. So it wasn't just like a simple win. It feels like a real shift.
And it's interesting, people are already drawing parallels. That comparison to AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, beating Joe Crowley back in 2018. What is it about these kinds of upsets? Why do they seem to hit such a nerve?
Well, looking at what the sources say, it often seems to be this mix of anti-establishment feeling
Okay.
and just really effective local grassroots work, boots on the ground. These upsets show voters are responding to new faces, people challenging the old guard.
Especially if they have bold ideas.
Yeah, especially on things like the economy, stuff that hits people's daily lives. It's a strong message.
Okay, so I said apparent victory earlier. That's key, right? Because of this ranked choice voting thing in the primary.
Exactly. RCV is crucial here.
So how does that actually work? Can you break it down for us? Because it might have really shaped this.
Sure. So basically, voters don't just pick one candidate. They rank them. First choice, second, third, up to fifth. Though you don't have to rank all five.
Right.
Then, if nobody gets over 50% of the first choice votes outright,
Which didn't happen here.
right, then the candidate with the fewest first choice votes gets knocked out, eliminated.
Okay.
And if you voted for that person first, your vote then goes to your second choice.
Ah, I see. It transfers.
Exactly. And they repeat that process round after round, eliminate the lowest, redistribute the votes until one candidate finally crosses that 50% threshold.
And this isn't the first time.
No, it's the second time for a mayoral primary. Mayor Adams actually won in 2021 using RCV.
But just for the primary, right? Not the general election in November.
Correct. That's really important. November is just straightforward. Most votes win. Simple majority.
Okay. So looking at the initial numbers we have, Mamdani got around 44% of first place votes.
Yeah, roughly 44%, with about 93% of precincts reporting at the time. Cuomo was back at 36%. So a significant gap.
And crucially, Mamdani was also the second choice for way more voters than Cuomo was.
That's right, tens of thousands more. And you combine that strong first-round showing with how RCV works, plus the fact that apparently over 200,000 people only picked a first choice, their votes don't transfer.
Oh.
It meant Mamdani's victory looked, well, all but assured, even before they finished counting every single transferred vote. His campaign strategy, like those cross endorsements we'll talk about, clearly anticipated how RCV could work for him.
Interesting. Okay, so let's get to know these contenders better. Starting with Mamdani, the progressive who seems to have pulled this off.
Okay.
He's young, 33, turns 34 in October, born in Uganda, came to New York when he was 7, became U.S. citizen in 2018.
Yeah, and his background's quite notable, too. Son of Mahmoud Mamdani, the academic, and Miraner, the filmmaker.
Right. And if he wins in November, he'd make history in a couple of ways.
Absolutely. First Muslim mayor of New York City, and the youngest in over 100 years, since John Perroy Mitchell back in 1914, who was 34.
Yeah.
And there's this other detail the sources picked up on, kind of surprising. He'd be the first mayor who met his wife on a dating app.
Really?
Yeah, Rama Douaji, she's a Syrian animator and illustrator. They got married in a civil ceremony earlier this year.
Okay. So platform-wise, what's his main focus?
It seems laser-focused on affordability, cost of living in the city.
Like what specifically?
Things like rent freeze on stabilized apartments, making city buses free, free childcare, even setting up city-owned grocery stores, and building a lot of affordable housing, 200,000 units.
Big promises. How does he plan to pay for all that?
New taxes on the very wealthy, the top 1% of earners. That's the proposal.
And his political experience, he's not entirely new to politics.
Yeah, he's been a state assemblyman since 2021. Represents parts of Queens, Astoria, Long Island City.
And how did he get that seat?
He actually won it by beating a 4-term incumbent back in 2020. A narrow win, but it made him the first South Asian man in the state assembly.
Okay. But his legislative record since then?
Well, the sources note it's somewhat limited. Only 3 relatively minor items he sponsored actually became law. And there was a pilot program for free bus routes he pushed for.
Yeah.
It ran for a year but wasn't renewed.
Okay. And his campaign style, how did he run this race?
Energetic, definitely grassroots. The reports talk about tens of thousands of unpaid volunteers, lots of viral videos really connecting online, and huge outreach efforts, especially in South Asian and Muslim communities in Queens, places like Flushing and Corona.
And endorsements. Did he pick up support from big names?
Oh, yeah. A lot of high-profile progressives. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Nydia Velázquez, Jamal Bowman before he lost his primary, Letitia James, the Attorney General, Juwan Williams, the public advocate, even people like New York Mayor Ross Baraka and Robert Reich.
So a real progressive coalition.
Definitely. Plus groups like the Democratic Socialists of America chapter in NYC, the Working Families Party, the Sunrise Movement for Climate, and several unions.
And you mentioned cross-endorsements. That was strategic for RCV.
Exactly. He cross-endorsed with Brad Lander, the controller, and another candidate, Eric Blake. The explicit goal, according to sources, was to use those second and third choice rankings to block Cuomo from getting to 50%. Clever tactical move.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were criticisms, controversies.
Right. Mayor Eric Adams, for instance, publicly questioned if Mamdani even could raise taxes as mayor, saying that power lies with the state assembly, where Mamdani already serves.
Okay, so questioning his authority or understanding of the role. What else?
There were concerns raised by some Jewish groups about his positions relating to Israel and Gaza, specifically the term intifada.
Right. Tell us about that.
Well, he co-founded a Students for Justice in Palestine chapter back in college. He supports the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, sanctions against Israel, although the sources say he wouldn't commit to advocating for it as mayor. And he drafted a bill in 2023 aimed at stopping New York nonprofits from funding Israeli settlement activity. That bill got a lot of criticism and didn't pass.
And the specific intifada comment?
Yeah, in one interview, he was asked about the phrase, globalize the intifada. He declined to condemn it. He stated that he felt he captured a desperate desire for equality and equal rights for Palestinian human rights.
How did he respond to the criticism about that?
He later said, it pains me to be called an anti-Semite. And he also mentioned receiving threats, horrible messages, saying things like, the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim.
That's awful. And there were other criticisms too, right, from Cuomo and others?
Yeah, more general criticisms about his readiness for the job, calling him unqualified, saying he lacks management chops, hasn't had a real job, isn't really interested in government, that kind of thing. Standard political attacks, maybe, but they were definitely part of the narrative.
Okay, so that's Mamdani. Let's pivot to Andrew Cuomo now, the veteran politician who, in the end, conceded.
Right. He made the call to Mamdani personally, congratulated him.
What did he tell his supporters?
Pretty straightforward concession. Tonight was not our night. Tonight was Assemblyman Mamdani's night. He acknowledged Mamdani ran a great campaign, said he deserved it, he won. Classy concession, according to the reports.
Now, Cuomo came into this race with baggage, the scandal-scarred description.
Yes, that stems from his resignation as governor in 2021. There was that attorney general's report concluding he'd sexually harassed at least 11 women.
And his defense?
He's consistently maintained he did absolutely nothing wrong. His explanation was more that he'd fallen behind what was considered appropriate workplace conduct. That was his framing.
And his campaign message this time around, what was he pitching?
He painted a picture of New York City as dangerous, chaotic, a threatening, out-of-control place.
Okay.
And the solution, he argued, was him. An experienced leader needed to restore order. That was the core message.
Despite the scandals, he still had considerable clout, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. The sources mentioned the power of a political dynasty. He pulled in a lot of endorsements from local leaders, labor groups.
And money.
Yes. Staggering sums of cash flowed into political action committees, the PASOKs supporting him. Even if his direct campaign fundraising had limits, the outside money was significant. It shows that power base was still active.
So what's next for Cuomo? He conceded the primary, but does he have other options?
Well, he had already qualified to run in the November general election on an independent party line. the secure NYC line, I believe.
So he could still run.
He could. And he made some comments suggesting he might be thinking about it. He said the primary electorate isn't necessarily representative of the city at large.
Implying the general election voters might be different.
Exactly. He talked about a broader pool of voters in November, and he also took a bit of a swipe at the current field for the general election, saying that besides himself, it was not an enticing field to choose from. So keeping the door open, it sounds like.
Interesting. Okay, so Mamdani wins the primary. Cuomo concedes, but maybe runs independent. What about reactions from other key players in the city?
Well, Mayor Eric Adams, who's running for re-election as an independent himself now, remember, because of his own indictment on corruption charges.
Right.
He didn't wait long, jumped on social media, said the city deserves a mayor proud to run on his record, not one who ran from his record or one who has no record. A clear jab at both Cuomo and Mamdani there.
Okay. Anyone else?
The Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa, also commented. And Brad Lander, the controller who cross-endorsed Mamdani.
Yeah.
He was pretty triumphant at his own election night party, apparently declaring, "Together, we are sending Andrew Cuomo back to the suburbs."
Yeah.
So clear battle lines being drawn.
Definitely sounds like it. So zooming out again, what does this whole upset signal for the Democratic Party, maybe nationally? Does it tell us anything bigger?
I think it really highlights that ideological divide within the party. It's pretty stark.
Between the establishment and the progressive wing.
Yeah. And it reflects what some reports called a vibe that's going on across the country. A sense that maybe Democratic voters are feeling a bit, I don't know, sour on the party leadership, the establishment figure.
And looking for something else.
Looking for different kinds of voices, maybe unconventional leaders, especially ones talking directly about those kitchen table economic issues.
Yeah.
Mamdani's win could be a signpost, for the kind of leader Democrats are looking for now.
And in New York City specifically, given the voter registration numbers.
Right. Democrats outnumber Republicans something like 8-1. So winning the Democratic primary is usually, though not always, a very strong indicator for the general election. It makes this primary particularly significant.
Okay. So wrapping up our deep dive today, we've looked at this really surprising result in the NYC Democratic mayoral primary. Zohran Mamdani's upset win, the whole ranked choice voting dynamic, the clash between him and Cuomo.
Yeah, quite a race.
We've explored their backgrounds, their platforms, the controversies.
And the challenge for Mamdani now really shifts, doesn't it? First, win the general election against Mayor Adams, probably Sliwa, maybe even Cuomo again.
Right.
And then if he does win, the even bigger challenge, trying to actually implement that really bold progressive agenda in a city as complex as New York. That's a huge task.
So maybe a final thought for you, or listener, to ponder. Beyond New York, what does this outcome really suggest about what voters, especially maybe younger Democrats, are prioritizing now? And how might these kinds of local grassroots movements keep shaking up the bigger political picture? Something to think about.